Okay. Hello all. So this is our 57th PC open discussion, and today we'll be discussing about deep inserts with APIs. We'll talk about what that means, how we do it. I have a small demo to talk about it, and this was again based on a question that was there, I guess, 2 weeks ago about deep inserts, maybe from Sandeep. He's not here yet, but you can watch the recording later. So let's go through the normals, which is where you go when you have to register every week. This is where you go every week to register if you are not a default attendee. And anybody who is in the meeting and want to be default attendee can drop their name and email in the chat. And I'll make sure that you get invited in future meetings. So let's start first from understanding the different parameters in API and all. And then we'll talk about the deep insert logic that was asked, I guess, a few weeks ago. So we have already talked about it, the get API parameters, when you have to get some info from your business central tenant, how you use it. And if you remember, we talked about different parameters that are needed, and these are kind of the 4 different parameters that are needed. One is the base URL, and that differs from different environment to environment. Like in Docker's, it's your Docker name with your OData feed, port number, and the API version. And the API version is the second parameter. And then as we did go through this, there are multiple companies in an environment. So you also need a company parameter for which you want to get data from. And at the end, you need to define the entity set name. And let me open a default API to see what that means. So the parameter that we use in the last parameter that we use for API call is entity set name, which is this name, which is attached to each API that you will see. So entity set name is used, not entity name. So if you are building a custom API, you need to make sure that this is the value that is used to consume or to post from that API. So it looks something like this. And this is a screenshot from the Visual Studio extension that we were using, which is the base URL, then API version, and then if there are companies and all. So let's quickly have a look on a get command before we move ahead. So let me do a delgo API deep insert. And as we did last time, I'll also create, I don't need the app.json or anything. I just create a settings.json. Oh, sorry. Is it still shareable? The screen is still visible?
Yeah.
Yes, visible.
Okay. So let's create a new settings.json that we'll use for storing the settings for our demo. And let me just quickly copy this from the last demo that we did. Okay. Let me open that project. Something like this, and I'll remove these are the AL settings. But this is kind of the REST client extension setting, which is what the preview options are, what kind of variables you want to use, and if I remember correctly, last time, and I'll have to check, created a username and password for testing. So let me pull that in. Okay. I hope that it still exists. Let me just test it. This was the username, and this is the password that I used last time. And this is one of the Business Central username password account expected to be on my environment. Now, once that is done, we have defined our setting. We can create an HTTP file, and let me zoom this in. You can see it. So let's say this is get.tpp. And as we talked about last time, we need to use these three dots to kind of fetch info. These are kind of separators for it. So like get list of APIs in that environment. And the model was simple, and let me copy that to save time, which is this. So this is our get from base URL API version, and this will give me all the APIs that are available, endpoint available on my environment. So my username and password is correct, it seems, and this is all the APIs which are exposed in my environment. Now, as we did last time, and as we can see here, to get anything specific, we need a company info. So what we did is we created a get companies function and then also set it into a variable by doing something like this. This is a variable, local variable. You can also have global. So global variables are stored here and the local variables are here. So this will get all the companies in the database, and then the first company in the that comes in reply of this command will be stored in this variable called company ID. Right now it should be empty. When I run this, it will return me the result, but the company ID will be set here for all my future references if I have to. Okay, let me close this to see the value. Okay, should have a value now. Okay. So now let's assume that if I want to get a, let's pick one of the API which is here, which is this. Let's keep it simple. If I have to pick, let's say, currencies, dimension, okay, let's do employees. So I just need the entity set name, which is employees, to pick this, and I can just copy paste this part here, and I'll tweak it. So if I have to get list of employees, I can then go ahead and append the company's thing into it, which is, I can say that I'm trying to get it from companies with passing company as my variable company ID. So this will and then I need to give the entity set name, which is employees. This will return all the employees stored in this company, which is the first company in the results. So let's first check what is the
Can you
first
check the
company.
spellings? Employee
Employee
spelling.
last entity name has L missing or one alphabet is missing.
Oh, okay. Let me
EMPLO.
bring this from here. Q. Okay. All right. So the first company that we saw was Cronus USA. So it'll be generating the list of all the employees in that company. And there is a query error. What is not found? 37 is not found. What is 37?
It should be the company
Oh,
ID.
sorry, I didn't close the bracket.
Yeah.
My bad. Let's send the request. Okay. This gives me the company ID, which is, in this case, is DC55D00B. Do this. Error find query syntax. What is the error? Let's read it. So it does a get base URL, then does a API v2 companies, and then passes the company ID to the variable, and then does a employees, which is the correct URL. Okay, let me try to get, say, customers is there, I guess. No. Okay. What is the company ID? Company ID is bcopendiscussion.
Is V 2.0 supposed to repeat twice?
Is it two?
So
Where is it?
version 2.0 in line number 14 API slash V 2.0 company. Somewhere I think it comes, the version number comes twice, if I'm not wrong.
Have we defined that there are two more things that we have to define: publisher and group, API group?
Yeah, this is the standard one. So
Okay.
let me pick one again from here, which is employees. Plug it in here. This is matching to this. Is it? Oh, it seems one extra. Every parameter needs only two of those. Because I was trying to auto-complete it, that's why I guess it in 3. Let's do this now. You don't have following permission. Okay, I don't have following permission. Let me check what happened to that user. If I can. Which is sandbox. Maybe I removed the permission while doing some other test. Okay, that's odd. Let me just make him super for the time being. That means API test did exist, and I might be testing some other features. I might have removed this user permission. Now he's super, and now if I try to send the request, it does return me all the employees. So that is typical GET that we have seen in the past. So now let's move ahead and actually talk about the next thing, which is the post. Now, as we have done the GET, the next thing is if we have to add some details back into my Business Central, if I have to write new records into my Business Central, and that's where the post command comes into picture. Now, other than what we already have used, which is the base URL, API version, companies, an entity set name, there is one additional parameter in the post, which is the content type. So you need to tell to this extension that what kind of content you are sending to Business Central, and then based on your content, it'll kind of write that into Business Central. So now let's try to do a post which will something look like this. If I have to add a new employee in Business Central, this is how it will be done. The first part is instead of get, now it says post. The base URL parameter remains same. This whole string remains same. At the end, there is a protocol that you need to add. Authorization remains same. And then, as I said, we just need to add the application / JSON in there. The other thing that we need to remember, which I learned hard way today, is there need to be a space between the value that you are trying to pass and the last parameter that you have passed, which is content type. Otherwise, it gives an invalid header message or something. So let's see that. So here we are, and let's first go to Business Central and see list of employees there. If I come here, there is no such employee with my name for reference. And let's create a new file just to keep things different. And I'll copy some pieces of it, like I'll need to set the company parameter. So I'll just copy all this, or maybe everything. Let's do this. So now I need to create a new employee. So I'll change this get to post. The URL, as you can see, remains same. There is no changes on that URL that we are trying to write from. And at the end, we need to add this HTTP thing. I'll have to read more about it, why we need this, but it seems to be, let's do this so that it assigns company ID. Okay. And then other than that, we need to add the content type as application/JSON. Now, if I don't give any space, just for the reference, if I add a value, and these values, let me show you, is let's say my name, and then there is a, well, let's quickly look into the base API. This is the employee one. So what I'm passing is one of all the parameters which are available in this API, which is I pass a number, which was this. Now I want to pass the given name, which will be assigned to the first name. So I can say that this is my given name, which is, let's say, Saurav in this case. And the second parameter I want to pass is, let's say, the surname. So I can pass surname, let's say Henny. Okay. You can add more things if you need, like if you want job title, you can add those, address line, and other things. You can just add any details that you want. And as soon as I do send this request, this will create a new employee in my business center with these details. So I haven't given a space. Keep an eye here. There might be an error message here, which is header name must be a valid HTTP token. I spent all my time in identifying it, but then I found on GitHub that you need to give a space here before your parameters and your header, between your header and your body. So now if I send a request, it will return me the record that is created over there. There's a record created with initials, given name, surname, and everything else. And now let's go into Business Central and quickly refresh this page. And we'll see that there is a new record created by using that post command in API to add that info in Business Central.
Saurav, it didn't use the number for the number, the field number. It didn't use the employee's number in. It just, imported SDH.
Oh, because in the employee, and if there is a number series attached to my, and it's all based on the setup, right? So if I try to create a new record, let's see, there's an employee number series where there is manual numbers allowed.
Well, how did it trigger it through an API?
No, it didn't. So if I just remove the manual numbers just for the demo, I'm pretty sure the API will get an error message that you can't create a number because there is no default number assigned. So right now I have removed that thing from there. So let me close this. Manual numbers are not now allowed. So now if I try to do this, and if I change it to DDH, and let's say this is demo number, let's see what happens. Now if I try to send a request, it gives me an error that whatever is generated from nav when you're trying to create it manually.
Well, how do you trigger it through, the API? Like from here, you need to trigger it on Business Central.
It didn't, because when it tries to register your record, it is kind of behind the scene calling in need insert true, right? And whenever it is trying to do that, it will respect whatever the code and the validation which are written inside your Business Central. So
And
go ahead.
can we run it without number now?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just, you know,
then it's supported. Yeah, if I remove the number, then it'll assign a new number to it, to a record, and it'll create it like 20.
see, okay, good.
So it's just how Business Central behaves for a user.
Okay.
Right? If Business Central doesn't allow you to do that manually, then you can't do it from API also.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else before we move ahead? Anyone? Yeah, so let's keep it as it is. Okay, so now let's try to understand what is the topic for today, which is deep insert. So we have seen insert that's happening pretty easily using a post command, and it's creating that record into Business Central. So why then the concept of deep insert? Now, what if you have to add an employee and also at the same time you want to add the default dimension to that employee, which is something like this, where you have an employee and then there are, let's say, 1 or 2 default dimensions that you want to attach to that record, which then will be assigned something like here. If I do employee dimensions, there are no dimensions right now. So what should I do that I can also create default dimension, because that's a pretty common need when you're working in Business Central integrations. And that's where the deep insert come into picture. Now, when you look at this API, and we talked about briefly about it in the last meetings, there are all these fields in this API, which is the ID, numbers, and all. But at the same time, okay, let's come down. There are these parts, and there is a part for default dimension. Now, if you look at it, what it is trying to do, it is trying to relate another API with entity set name default dimension, which is API v2 default dimension, based on a relation of parent ID with the system ID of employee. That's kind of how we join records in Business Central, and then the parent type as constant 4. So I can also add some details into this part related to that particular employee when I'm trying to create that employee from APIs. Okay, so let's see how we do that. What is my VS Code? Here it is. So I'll copy this as it is, and I'll say with default dimension. Now, before we do that, let me go back and what we talked about in the last meeting. I'll remove this, or I'll change it to get. I'll remove this part and remove this. Now, when I run this, the get statement, it returns me all the employee info, and that's it. And if you remember last time, we talked about how you can see what is available in those separate boxes, more or less, is you will have to expand that part. So what you can do is you can do expand, and then you need to give that part name, which in this case is default dimensions. Sorry, this default dimension. So when I do this now, it should return me the dimension if they are attached to a resource. Oh, so to an employee. So this employee EH have no default dimension. This employee have no default dimension. Okay, that seems crazy. None of them, I guess, have any default dimensions. Okay, yeah, this one has it. So this one is TD. TD seems to have some default dimension for department, ADM, and all. So now we want to add the dimension while we are trying to insert a new employee. So we'll go back and we'll change it to post. And let me copy this back again. Just here. And then I'll also add this. Just here. Now when I have to add that default dimension, and that is inside my employee info, what I can do is I can create a subnode here. And inside this, I can assign my parameters for this. Now, how you add dimension would be written here. So this part is based on this API v2 default dimension page. So now let's go ahead and see the API v2 default dimension. It seems to be this. Okay. Now this page is based on a table called default dimension, the API page, and it needs some parameters, which is dimension ID or dimension code and dimension value code. Now when you have to add a new dimension to the system or a new dimension value in the system, then you can call the post method of this. If you have to get all the dimensions from the system, then you can call the get method of this. So what we want right now is to assign an existing dimension value and dimension value code to our employee. So for that, we'll have to get a dimension value from this page. And stop me wherever it's a little bit confusing. And then what we'll have to do is we'll have to pick the dimension set ID, not the dimension set ID, but the ID of that record, which is this ID, which is the unique for that record, and utilize that in our API for the insert. Let me show you in the system first before we go ahead. There is here, which was that user Terry, I guess, who had the dimension. So this is the dimension that is attached to that Terry employee, and it is department ADM. If you zoom in this this info, you will see that there is a system ID for this combination, which is attached to it. And how we do that, when you go in here is, let's say, dimension single. And if I have to add one more, I go up, these combination gets a unique, every record in Business Central have an ID. So if I come here and see the ID of this, there will be a system ID for this. So every record in Business Central, either in the base table or in the custom table, gets a unique system ID. And that is what is used in the API pages. So to attach a dimension, I first have to fetch a dimension. So let's do that here and say get default dimension that you want to attach. For that, I'll create a variable so that we can use it. Let's say name is default dim. And then I will call the same API, which is a get API. Let's pick it from here. Well, let's pick it from here. Just have to change it to get. Okay. So now what I can do, I can say that I need to get from the company, the API name was, this is the default dimension, but I need to get a dimension value. Is there a part that talks about dimension value? Let me see. Because what I need is the dimension value that I want to attach. So there should be an API for dimension value. Is it dimension? Yeah, this is dimension value. It is based on the dimension value table. So I'll get the record of that dimension value that I want. So I'll just pick the entity set name from here and try to fetch the dimension value. So let's see what it returns first before we move ahead. This is returning me all the dimension value, which is code 10, and the value that is displayed is euro, and then there is a dimensions code attached to it for sure. So if I have to fetch one particular dimension, let's pick this one where the code is 30. So what I can do is I can filter out this query with fetching only value where the code is equal to the value that I want, which is 30. This will return me, of course, one record from it, which is the code 30 for Europe, North America. Now that is returned into this by this API query, and I want to store that result, or that result is stored into this variable called default dim. So what I can do is I can, again, as we did for company, I'll set the default dim and I'll say my default dim value is equals to whatever comes from my default dim parameter, and then I need the whatever is in the response will be here. So let me copy this. Whatever is stored in the response value 0, which is the index 1. If you have multiple, you can change that index to 1, 2, 3, whatever you want. And that value is now stored in this variable. Now I just need to come down to my post command, which is this, and here inside this default dimensions, I can just pass the parameter whatever it needs, which is dimension value ID, and I can equate to whatever my variable is giving me. So I can just use my curly braces and do a default dim value. That seems a little bit overdone, so let me adjust that, and as it's a value, I'll just pass it as a string. What will happen as a result of this is it will create a new employee with, let's say, my employee and the dimension, and that will also add the dimension which is returned from this attached to this unique ID. So now let's send this request, and then there is a problem that I cannot get response convert default dimension response 0 ID to expected keyword. Okay, I add it to, oh sorry, that's correct, default dim is here, and then it should be passed as default dim value. Let me first send this. This should get a value. It didn't. Why it didn't get a value here? This was not body. Default dim. It should get a value. This is returning one result. This is the array 0 of it. And it should get the dimension ID for this. Let's see. There is an ID attached to it. So it should use that. I'm always having trouble with this. Okay, sometimes you remove this. Let me try this. Does this get a value now? No. default him. I created a variable here, default him, get the results from it, and then I'm trying to store these results into this variable. Okay, authorization is basic and password, which is correct. In my this default dimension value, we created 2. Again, I didn't match the brackets. There are 2 brackets here and 3 brackets here. Wow. Okay. Hope this one works next time. Okay. So let's send a request. This gets a value. Yes, this time there is a value here. So equal to this. Now when I do a post, it will create a new employee with employee number 0030 and also will attach a dimension area 30 into it. Let's come to Business Central. There's this new employee, and the employee already have a dimension area 30. So now that's what kind of the deep insert is, where you can pass the child entities with your record, with your main record. And if I'm not wrong, Sandeep said you wanted to see for sales orders more or less.
Yes.
Okay.
That's where the tricks are.
So let's try that. Okay. So for sales order, what I need at a minimum, I need items and I also need customers to create a sales order. So just for the reference, let's try to get multiple items. So let's do a get items, and I'll take again this thing here, and we'll start with get first. Remove this, and the item once is called item. All right. So this will give me a sorry.
The URL employees.
Right. This should give me a list of items which are available in the central. Let's quickly see this. So this will return me this item, item number 2, item number 3, 4, and 5, all those items. Now let's store this result in a variable so that I can pick the multiple items from that result. So I'll do the name of my variable as items. So when I do this, now all the results that are written are stored in this item variable. And I can assign those items to my local variables. So I can say set items for sales order. And what I want to do is, let's say item 1 is equals to items. Let me copy that part. Okay. Should not forget to delete this. And okay. So this will store item 1 as the first item that is returned from this list. And let's do item 2 and 3. This one I want whatever the result return as 1 or whatever the result return as 2. So I'm now trying to create a sales order with 3 items in sales line. Now, as I said earlier, we also need a customer to create a sales order. So now what we'll do is get customers. I'll take this as it is because I also have to save that, and I'll change it to customers. And the URL or entity name for that is customers. So this command will give me all the customers. And let me not pick the first one. This is 0. This is 1. And let's pick the 2 out of it. So let's copy this as it is.
Saurabh, will you require ID or number in the items? Value 0
ID.
dot ID.
ID.
Okay.
We'll return the ID because everything, and let me show you that. That's a good question.
No, my point is, while creating the lines, will you require ID or will you require the item number?
I'll show you that.
Okay.
Let's see that. Okay. So what I'm trying to get at is value 3, which is 2, and this is 3, so it should be 30,000. Now, just to see this about the ID thing, this is based on the sales order one. So let me open the base one and come into my sales orders. The sales order, if we see here, should also have a part for lines, which is this, which is referring to API sales order line. So my API sales order lines are attached here based on the item ID. So this is what we need to to create an item is based on the ID. And if I'm not wrong, and I might have to check this, but can I create? Oh, but then there is account ID. So if you are trying to create a GL line there, then you use account ID, and then there is what else? There are only two options. You can only create an item or a GL line into there. But yeah, to add an item, we need the item ID in the sales line. If you have to add a GL account, then you use the account ID to get the GL account into it. So everything is around ID. So that answers the question, more or less?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks.
Okay, so now we have a customer, if I'm not wrong, and then we also have 3 items that we need. And as we have seen on the sales line, if you go back to the sales order, at the top you will see it will also need the customer ID to create it. So we have found a customer which is here, and we have also found 3 items which are here. So now we just need to do the creation of sales order. For that, let's do a create sales order with lines. Okay. Now let's call the post one, which is something like this. So let me copy this. This, and then instead of this, I'll do a sales order. Let me be very sure about the case. It's very important to remember the case. Okay. And where is my sales orders? And then as I also want to write into sales line at the same time, I need to come here and search for that part, which is sales order lines. So I'll expand it as we did in the last time. So I'll come here and expand it, change it to my sales order line. So this will expand the sales order line while it is trying to write it to it. And if you're writing the expand, it is also assuming that in your body of your request, there will be a sales line part of it. What I can do now is I can pick those different parameters from here. First one, let's say the minimum I need is customer ID. And you can set other fields if required. I'll pick the field customer ID. Come back here. So my customer ID is equated to whatever comes from my this customer. And this is plural, this is singular. Basically, I'm using it like this, but I can simply do my curly braces and then the customer ID. So this will add this customer into this. But just to keep it simple, I can now add the part which is my sales order lines here and open my curly braces, which is a Json error if you know it more or less. And then in my sales order lines, there will be a definition of API sales order lines. There is what I need is the item ID. Okay. Okay. And I'll add it here, item ID. And the item ID that I want to pass is whatever that I have it from here in item 1. What I can do is item 1. This always adds an extra bracket for some crazy reasons. Okay. Okay. So that adds my item. If I also, let's say, have to add the quantity into it, so there should be a available field for quantity, which is this. So I can just go back and use that to whatever the quantity I want. Let's say 5. Now, what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to add the customer ID that I want for this sales order. And then in the sales order lines, I want to pass first line, and I have to break it like this with these values. Item ID as item 1, and then quantity as 5. But as I have 3 items, I'll have to repeat this pattern here and change it to item 2 and the quantity as, let's say, 3. And then one more time as item 3 and let's say quantity 1. If you have to add more details, feel free to do that. I'm not just telling you that you are limited to this. And let's take an example. If I also have to add
So you need to define type also, whether it's item or GL or something.
No, so if you read this, when you choose the item ID field, it automatically adds it to be a type item. If you go into this, it will validate its type as item and all.
Okay, thank you.
So, and that's the only 2 options that I see here, which is the item ID or the account ID. So if you have to add a GL account, then you can use it. But I'm pretty sure there are no more options available. As in, there are line type, which will surely define the type other than item and account. If you have to add a comment or things like that, then you will have to verify this using the type. But as I was saying, let's use the external document number in our sales order. So what I'll do here is after the customer ID, I'll use it as whatever the value I want to give. So let's say bcopendiscussion. What this will do is this will create a sales order with whatever the next number that is generated from the system. We'll use this customer, which is attached to this ID based on whatever we chosen here, which is customer 3, 30,000. And we'll use the item 1, 2, and 3 based on our responses of the query of 0, 1, 2. And we'll also add the external document number as BC in discussion.
Saurav, so if I use account ID, say for a sales line, that would be automatically posted as type general ledger, general account.
GL account, yeah.
Okay.
So let's send this request and let's quickly see it. And the customer ID, and then that cannot be found in the related record. Okay. So it says the customer BB does not exist. So let's quickly see why it's rejecting the customers. I chose the customer number 30,000, and this should be B0. So I don't know. Did I did a customer? Okay, let me just keep it easier here. Maybe getting confused with these. Let me get the customers again. This gives me customer, and I'm hoping I have the IDs for item. Okay, let's do a request. Of the sales order entity buffer contain a value this that cannot be found in related table customers. Okay, let me change this to get the first value. Is it that error or is it something else? Sales orders, sales order lines. Okay, let me get the customer. Okay, the first one is 10,000. Now let's try to create a request here. Why it's saying it like this? Okay. Oh, sorry, I passed. That's my bad to use to copy paste. That's why I hate copy paste. It should be. It's trying to get the customer items instead of customer. So because the result of this get is stored in this, and because I copy pasted it from top, I just pasted it as items. My bad. So now when I send the request, it will take the customer ID 3, which will be stored as BF. And now if I try to do a send request, it will create a document with the number 008 with an external document number of bcopendiscussion, and then we'll also have its lines here. Line type item, within desk, quantity 5, and so forth and so on. But let's quickly go into our business center, open our sales order. There's this order which came with the customer PO document as bcopendiscussion and has 3 items. And I was doing some of the testing for the customer, so that's why you see these weird colors here. But 3 items with 531, the way we have defined in our API call as 531, they all are created as it is in the system. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
If you want to have a look, and if there are no questions, and if you want to have to quickly look at it, we can also try with an account ID thing if you want. So there should be a GL account API
Yeah,
page.
please do.
Okay, this is based on what table? This is based on GL account. So what we'll have to do is we'll have to get a GL account from this API, which is the accounts one. So let's quickly go back into PS code here and also get an item. Sorry, get a GL account. So let's say get an account, and let's do this and pass it this. So domain as it is. Okay. So based on this, I'll get all the accounts, and then as we did here.
There's a double before the accounts.
Oh, sorry. Thanks. I would have been searching for it otherwise. Okay, so this is GL account, and I'll change it to. I have to pass this. Okay. Accounts. Okay. So I'll pass it here. This will bring it here, and it will be GL account ID. Okay, let me run through this, and this is right now using account number 3, just this. Now I only need to see where the direct posting is true, and you can always filter it out if you want here. Like you can, as we did above here in the get one, you can always set different filters if you need it. Here, yes. So if I have to filter these GL accounts before I utilize them, I can always come here on this and then filter on direct posting is true, where posting direct posting it's true. Okay, that doesn't seem the right option. Maybe 1, that's a boolean. Okay, no, doesn't like that. Alright, so now we have different accounts here. So I can pick, let's say, the first one. If I have to pick the first one, I'll have to change it here.
Can you put category equal to income or something?
And let me fetch that first. And you said category is equals to income. So I'm pretty sure you can do and category equals to income. Let's do this. No, I don't expect this value. Okay, let me try this first. This is working. And no. We did this last week, if I remember it correctly. Okay, direct posting is still false. How we did it last time? Let me see that somewhere. I have some references. Okay. Okay. We did last time. Okay, I'll have
Can
to
you change income as? Can you change the income as I caps?
No, it's filtering for the income. I'm pretty sure it's filtering it for the income.
Income is working, and means
Sarah, the
two
and
filter.
percent be replaced with and. Just spell it A-N-D.
Instead of and %, yeah.
Yeah. And try it now. See?
So, yeah, great, man. Thanks.
No problem.
Things are simple sometimes.
Well,
Okay.
I tried it before.
Okay. So what we are trying to do right now is we are trying to pick what ID here. We are trying to pick the third account, which is this account 4024250, to add this on this. Now once you have the GL account, I can come here, and this is, let's just for the separation, and then I'll also add here a new line. This time it is, I'll have to see. Okay, on the sales order one, QRSL sales order lines. Another one was account ID. Okay. So I'll add the account ID as our GL account ID. Okay, and let's say quantity 2. So now this should create a sales order with 3 lines of item and 1 line of type GL account. with a external document number as bc-open discussion. Let's do a send request. This creates one. So let's go to the Business Central. Let's go back. There's new order. Let's open that. And there is a new line with GL account as 40,300. Does that make sense? Yes.
Yes, it does.
Yes, it does.
Okay. So yeah, I guess that was another part, adding a sales order with the multiple sales line. So I guess that's all I guess I had for today. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer those. I see something.
Well,
in the chat.
you know, just a suggestion, if you will. Maybe we should go through the new features in Business Central 19.
Okay, why not? That's okay.
They've added a couple of features that I do like, really.
Okay, and then Sam, I just posted a video today about creating Docker preview.
Yeah.
If you had any issues on that, that's available on YouTube.
Yeah, thank you, Saurabh. It worked the first time. Just had to change the answer to that URL.
Okay.
Thank you, Saurabh.
Hi, Saurabh.
Hello.
Yeah. Balaji here. So I wanted to ask whether it is possible to modify or delete any record using this post from API request.
You have to use the delete command.
Yeah, there are other parameters, I guess, available other than the get and the post.
Patch and delete. I think.
Patch is
and
for
delete. Modify and delete for delete. Yeah.
Okay.
And you need to pass one more parameter along with it sometimes. If
Yeah.
match.
Yeah, if match condition, otherwise it will fail.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Vikas, go ahead.
Yes. Hi, Saurabh. I have a question, but not related to this topic.
Okay.
So can I ask that one?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. See, actually, I just wanted to know, is there any kind of toolkit you are aware of, or MS going to release? Like, if we try to upgrade from Indian version, like from NAV 16 to latest any cloud version, means yes, we will follow the upgrade path, but the challenge that we face, like with the GST, the localization part, I'm focusing, like suppose there on NAV 16 there are some GST related tables, and if we move from NAV 16 to BC 14, then
you can't, right?
Yes,
there is no BC 14.
There is
right? There's no BC 14 for India at this point, right?
Yes, no Indian version. So it says W1 or the no, and sorry, Indian version is not there. And if we go with that, so those tables are not in that.
You can't go with that. Microsoft, and Sandeep sir can correct me if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
Last time we discussed, Microsoft is still working on that upgrade path.
Okay.
The short answer is you cannot do it as on
Right.
Okay. Actually, I wanted to confirm.
Unofficially, it is expected to come in October first week.
Yeah.
Okay.
So wait for it, because you can't follow whatever the upgrade guides are available on the web, because they will heavily rely on BC14. And you can't, if you go to a W1 version of BC14, then you lose not just GST but other tables and fields which are specific to India localization.
If we like, we can staging table, middleware table. If we create, like, we replicate data from
This is
can
Microsoft.
we do like this way or not?
This is Microsoft responsibility, so don't touch on it, because how GST is changed from X version to Y version, I don't know. Do you know it completely or not? And how the data need to be manipulated, that's something is Microsoft responsibility also, right?
Yes. So we all are waiting for. Like,
Yeah, and wait for it. As in, till the point there's an official toolkit for it. You'll have to wait for it. That's plain and simple on that part.
Thank you for the
Can I ask a question related to this?
Yeah.
If we have a version, if we have an implementation where there is no finance module involved, no sale purchase, only one of the sub modules is involved where there is no localization, can we do that?
Then you need to convert it to W1 in your current version, which would be importing a W1 object set on top of your India localization. Okay, all objects from W1 into your India localization. If there are values in India localization fields or table, it will give you a sync warning that you'll have to handle during the upgrade. And once it is converted to W1, then you can take them to SAS and replicate it on a India version also. That's completely possible. So,
and we can do it for on-premise as well.
Yes. So as of today, till today, you can replicate to SAS from Business Central 14 on-prem. So once you are on Business Central on-prem, 14 on-prem, then you can replicate them to SAS.
Great.
Yeah. And that's possible. I have done one last year from a UK to a North America, and then from North America merged it with another company in the same organization, and then replicated them, both of them, to SAS. So that's all possible. You just have to take that detour to switch it to W1 first, because not in Business Central Word, but in NAB Word, W1 was the kind of the parent for all the localized versions.
Yes.
Okay. Anything else?
Hi, Saurabh Pradhan here.
Saurabh.
I wanted to ask whether if you received my question
I haven't.
the
Right. I was waiting for your question. Which ID you send it to?
I've sent it to Post Saurabh, I guess, from the using your blog.
I haven't. Seriously, I haven't. I today when I was planning for this session, I remember that we talked about the file handling thing, but I checked both of my email and I didn't. So maybe you want to resend it, and I'll paste my ID in chat.
Yeah,
and surely I'll be happy to talk.
Okay, I'll send it to you on your mail. So because I was late in this meeting, so I thought maybe we have covered.
No worries, no. We'll surely talk about it next week, and if you can't see it, then it'll be available on YouTube later. So no worries about it.
Okay, great.
Okay. Anything else, anyone? And then we have DynamicsCon coming up, right? So we'll see you all there. Tanya is here. Tanya's session is there. Also on the last day. That's next week, yeah. So before our meeting, we'll have all our DynamicsCon session done.
Yeah, yours is on Tuesday, isn't it?
Mine is on the last day, yeah. Mine is on 23rd.
23rd?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, right. 10 tips for BC users. Okay.
Yes.
I'm looking forward for
it. We might have discussed all what I've talked in sessions.
Well, try it again. Just, listen to it again. Maybe it would sink in.
Okay. Sounds good.
Well, thank you, sir, for everything. It really is helpful.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Have a great day. Bye.